Hello everyone and welcome to SuttonsDaze. Today I thought we would talk a little bit about storing fats and oils. It's not going to be really great news for long-term food storage, but it's still really important to have. Let's get started. Fats and oils require a cool, dark, dry, humid-free environment, okay? Storing your olive oil bottle right next to your hot oven is going to actually shorten its life. Storing your lard right next to your hot oven is going to shorten its life. Leaving it exposed to the air is going to shorten its life. There's really a great acronym. I wrote it down here. It's called HALT, H-A-L-T, HALT. And it's humidity, air, light, and temperature. Those are the four things that will destroy your oil and your fat and oil storage, along with pretty much all your other food storage, okay? But HALT, I love that acronym. I think it's so much fun. So halt, stop. We are going to give you some hints and tips. We're going to tell you what to look for regarding storing fats and oils. The bad news is there is no long-term food storage options for fats and oils that I have discovered, that I have found, that I have tried, okay? Now, the one thing to that, the one caveat to that is hydrogenated oils, like say Crisco. That's the common brand, right? That actually lasts a lot longer than your typical lard or anything else. I mean, you can get several years out of that, okay? How healthy is it for you? That's something you have to make a personal decision on. But as far as olive oil, lard, butter, peanut butter, nuts, anything that has oil in it even, you have a very finite time in order to store these things in the proper conditions. And that's a big thing right there, is the proper conditions. We can't give you a B date, the in out date. We can't, because it's going to depend on every single person's individual storage situation. So you have to take it with a grain of salt and work with it depending on how you have your food storage set up. So wanted to share this with you. Using any rancid oil can lead to serious health hazards. In addition to having strange flavors and odors, it contains carcinogenic free radicals. These pesky molecules are then absorbed into the foods that the oil is added to. And we all know avoiding free radicals is just good health sense, right? I mean, we have enough issues. Let's try not to add any more of those. It can cause stomach issues. It can cause digestive issues. I was reading something where it can actually increase the potential for heart issues. Okay, so you don't, even though it's not like eating a rotten piece of meat, you're not going to get sick like you would off of that instantly. Over time, it's detrimental for your health, for your body. So you want to try not to eat rancid oils. Okay, so in this house here, we have lard, we have olive oil, and we have butter. Those are the three oils that I use the most when it comes to cooking. And mainly it's olive oil and butter. Those are my favorites. So when I store those, I store them in the pantry in the coolest area that I can. There are no heat vents that are open in the pantry room. They're all covered up. So even in the summertime, it doesn't get the air conditioning in there. It relies on the air that comes through from the rest of the house. But my butter is stored in the freezer, and if you have the space, you can store your olive oil, your lard, any of the oils that you use. You can store those in your refrigerator. It will create the perfect environment for your oils to stay in for the time that you have them. Do you still have to watch for them going rancid? Absolutely. I highly recommend a Sharpie marker and a date on when you bring that into the house, because you're going to want to keep track of that. If it's something that you don't use a lot of, get a really small bottle. Don't buy the economy size, family size, thing of olive oil if you're not going to use that within a year. You want to get the smaller bottle if that's what you're going to use, or the smaller container of lard if that's what you're going to use. Rancid lard tastes terrible. It's terrible. So it'll just ruin whatever you put on it. But, in addition to being just really bad for you. Some fats, like I said, like butter and margarine, if you use margarine, can be stored in the freezer. And I have had butter, I rotate it through pretty good. I only buy butter once a year, and I normally am still using the previous years when I go stock up for the coming year. So I normally have a year and a half's worth of butter in the freezer at any given time. I've never had it go bad. I have had to be careful not to store certain things next to it, like, don't put it in the same freezer with peppers or onions or that kind of thing, because it will take on the flavor, but it stores very well in there. Foods like nuts store very well in the freezer. They're good for about a year or two. Some people will say, oh, I've had them in there for 3 years, whatever works for you. But that's the time frame that most experts give it, is 1 to 2 years, depending on the nut. And then you have to be careful because of the oil. In the freezer, I have not run into an issue, but we rotate through everything pretty regularly. So it's not anything that I've run into. Now, I have had lard go rancid because I kept it in a hot kitchen and it took too long for me to get through it. I have never had olive oil go rancid, but I know that it can, and I haven't had it go rancid here in my kitchen. But when I used to work in the restaurants, I did run across one that went rancid, and it's not a fun thing. So you want to make sure to write those dates on and make sure that those things are rotated through. One of the things that I recently read was that even though darker oils, like we really like that extra virgin olive oil, it's a darker oil, that rich, beautiful stuff, that darker oils will go rancid faster than the lighter colored oils. So if you're looking at something like canola oil or vegetable oil, those will go rancid too. But because they're so light in color, they don't go bad as quickly as the darker oils do. So that's something to take into consideration. But if you don't use it, don't buy it, okay? Because it does no good. It's a waste of money. A lot of times when people are talking about food storage, it's skimmed over significantly when it comes to fats, because there's just not a lot of information out there. And because it's not good news about long-term storage. We need a certain amount of fat in order to properly absorb fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. Very important. It's a significant calorie intake if you're on reduced calories, if you're under a stressful situation. When it comes to people being particular about certain foods, very important. People want a certain crispness, or they want a certain, flavor, and that you can only get with the oils. And so to avoid food fatigue, especially if you're eating beans and rice a lot, oil is really important, okay? It's important to get everything digested properly, and it's important for our bodies to function and absorb the vitamins that are necessary. So what do we need to do? We need to find some long-term solutions that aren't detrimental to our health. Some folks will say coconut oil. Coconut oil lasts a really long time. Coconut oil, I believe, is not as healthy as it was once touted a few years back. And it will last, though, a good 2 years. It will last 2 years-ish, which makes it a very economical choice if you want to store up. So look into coconut oil and the different ways that you can utilize it in your kitchen. It can spoil, and you'll know when it goes rancid, okay? But it'll change a color, and it'll get chunky, kind of like curdled milk, and it's just it's not good. But until that point, you're normally good for a couple of years, which is like a whole year longer than most any other oil. So for conversation's sake, olive oil stored at the right humidity, without exposure to air, without exposure to light, and at a good cool temperature, will also last about 2 years. It really depends on which source you're going to and how good the olive oil is. The light olive oil, the dark olive oil, it's going to take a little bit of research to dig into this, but let's focus on a year. Some people are going to say, Lisa, I'm a canner. I can butter. Okay, so as you know, it's not an approved method, so I don't necessarily put it out there and promote it. I do know that if you can butter, okay, it's not something that I'm going to do unless I absolutely have no choice, because the end product is not something that will fit the way that our household utilizes butter. So it will, once you crack that jar, it goes bad much faster. It definitely shortens the life. For us here, we'd have to do it in those tiny jelly jars. It, wouldn't make sense any other way. And so that's just a lot of work for a lot of hassle and a lot of headache. Like I said, If I have no other choice, I will do it, but not until then. Another option, ghee is another butter product that can be stored, and it's normally good longer term on your shelves. They do have a commercially canned butter. It's called Red Feather canned butter, and that's normally good for, I think, 2 to 4 years. And that's a lot of what people who can butter are, saying that their butter's good for. I don't know anybody that's done it longer than that. Like I said, I haven't done it. It's not my cup of tea. I pick my battles. But in a grid down SHTF situation, you can bet I'm not losing that butter. I'm going to put it in jars. So you weigh the pros and cons. You make decisions that work for you and your household. At this particular time, there will be no butter in jars. You have options, but for long-term storage, you really don't. A majority of the information that's out there says anywhere from 1 to 2 years, and sometimes, unless it's commercially canned, is like 4 years, or unless you're canning butter yourself, I've heard last up to 4 years. But again, not something that I promote or advocate in any way. So in an emergency situation, it's great information to have. Otherwise, no, not here. But for a long-term storage, there's not really a lot of options there. So that is one of those things that you're going to have to make sure that if you are stocking up for life's little emergencies, that you have a year's worth of fats and oils, but only the kind that you legitimately already use. I say this with everything. Don't stock up on it if you don't use it today. If you don't use butter, don't stock up on butter. If you don't use lard, don't stock up on lard. Because 365 days from now, I don't want you coming at me saying, I wasted all this money stocking up on all this stuff and it's no good. That's because you didn't use it. Normally with our pigs, when we take all of our pigs to the processor, I always tell the processor, whatever the customers don't want, I will take. I want the hearts, I want the livers, I want the fat, because I don't want any of that to go to waste, okay? And so I know, though, the limits that we have as far as how much we actually use. So I won't process every single thing that I've got in there because I don't want it hanging out for that long. I'd rather keep it in the freezer, vacuum sealed, until a need becomes necessary. So when you're thinking about storing up on fats and oils and foods that contain fats and oils, remember, just cut it off at 365. That's probably the easiest way to remember. And then make sure you're rotating all of your stuff. Make sure you're keeping track of it. And if it tastes off, don't eat it, because it is not good for you. It's really not good for you. So fats and oils, not great news for long-term storage. There is no great news for long-term storage. Probably you would have to get it from some kind of animal source, if you're looking like, end of the world kind of stuff. But if you're looking at stocking a pantry for life's little emergencies for, a few years, then you're normally good for a year. So stick to that 365. This was kind of all over the place, I feel like. So if you have any questions or share your experiences on how you store different fats and oils. Like I said, I don't advocate canning butter, but there are people that do it. You can also get, if you eat pork, you can also get a lot of the fat from the pork itself. And there's always tallow that comes with beef. You can find, fattier pieces of beef that have the tallow that you can do also. So those are alternatives, but it depends on how you get your meat products and, how you store them. That's going to be a big kicker right there. Okay, I'm always looking for more suggestions, more ideas, more alternatives. So if you have any, be sure to drop them in the comment section below. I would love to have this discussion with you, because fats and oils are something that we genuinely do need, just not as much as they normally say. Now, I did say, this one was interesting. So from the Church of Jesus Christ, they had this statement that, in the United States, an average adult consumes each year the following approximate amounts of dietary fat in these various forms. One adult, 24 pounds in cooking and salad and mayonnaise type dressings. Cooking oils, salad oils, okay, and mayonnaise type dressings. 23 pounds in shortening and frying fats, 20 pounds of dietary fat from meat, poultry, fish, and cheese, and then 13 pounds from butter, margarine, peanut butter, and other foods. That's a lot of fat, you guys. That's a lot of fat. So if that's what the average American adult consumes, then we need to find ways to make sure that we have what we need to get by. We should not be consuming all of that, okay? But we do need some. It's very important. So take into consideration your fats. Remember, if it goes rancid, pitch it. Don't eat it, but replace it. And if it's an option, do lighter color oils because they tend to last longer, but you still want to store them away from any heat. Halt. Remember Halt. Humidity, air, light, and temperature. I hope this was helpful. And until next time, be safe.